Supernatural Season 10, Episode 8, Hibbing 911. Now, this episode is definitely interesting because we got two characters back. We got um, Deputy Hanscom, or Handsome, however you say it. I guess it's Hanscom because it sounds like handsome. We got her back, and she was really funny in this episode. I enjoyed her, and she kind of got into the main plot with the characters in this one, and I actually enjoyed that. I thought it was pretty cool. I was waiting for them to show it where it's like, oh, here's Jodie again, which I always love seeing Jodie. She's like the only person who comes back that isn't, that wasn't Bobby, and she's still alive. Like everyone else just dies off. But every time she comes back, she's either, she just escapes danger or she's really in no danger at all. And I guess technically she just escaped danger in this one again. But, it's always good to see her come back. And I enjoyed this episode, her being really serious. I was curious as to how this episode was really going to go because when it started off, they showed the flashbacks with Jodie, and they showed her after the last time she was in the show, which was when she actually took in this girl who was basically like the, feeding person for the vampires. So I thought like maybe it's going to focus on her and somehow, Chief Hanscom is going to be involved in that, or maybe it'll just be the girl, and for whatever reason, if it's the girl and somehow Jodie wasn't in it. I was very curious, and then I was like, okay, it's not with the girl in it, but it's with Jodie, so maybe it's just these two the whole episode or something. I wasn't really sure how it was going to go. But ultimately, I enjoyed the episode. It wasn't anything spectacular. I was hoping for more. I thought this might be the mid-season finale. I'm really glad it wasn't, of course, because, it was an okay episode. It was honestly like a typical episode. The main issue that I've had with this one is that it was another one-off episode, especially after last week's episode, which oddly enough my girlfriend is watching right now. But it was a good episode, but like after last week's episode, and then, of course, the mid-season finale next week is going to be a really big episode where it involves the main story, and based on the preview, it's going to get to something that I was really hoping for, and it was something they touched on a little bit here and there, which is the whole Marky Kane thing, and I'm really glad to see them bring that back. If they aren't going to bring full Demon Dean back, at least they are they're at least acknowledging the fact that the mark is still there. It's not just gone and has no effect. And even in this episode, Dean mentions like for the first time, which means that in the episode when they were in the house, when he killed the shapeshifter and he shot her a bunch of times, it just shows like, hey, I still felt it, I just kind of lied, which was fairly obvious because that's kind of what Dean does. But at least they mentioned it, so I'm excited for the mid-season finale. And like I said, the one before this was really good, and I think that's the big thing that kind of makes this episode less than it really was. Like, as a normal Supernatural episode, it was really good. We had some great moments. Like, my favorite stuff, honestly, had nothing to do with the vampires. It was really just Jodie and Hanscom together was, like, the best part of this episode. And I think that was really the point, because the only vampire stuff that really even happens is at the very end of this episode when they find out and then go hunt the vampires. Other than that, it's like, it's just Jodie and Hanscom kind of trying to deal with things, and Jodie's like, okay, I know that it's not just some weird monster attack, or not just some animal attack, it's a monster, and she kind of has to do what Sam and Dean typically do, like, okay, I can't exactly tell her exactly what's going on, but I have to find a way to get the answers I want to get, while also being with her, because she won't leave me alone, pretty much. So I enjoyed that for sure, and all the comedy stuff, and just the way Hanscom talks, just her dialect is kind of funny to me, and it's kind of just like super happy, and her giving all these weird nicknames to Jodie and stuff like that was really funny. So I definitely enjoyed that more than the monster portion. Honestly, it wouldn't be Supernatural if there was no monster portion, period. But I feel like this episode, the sole focus was just to have a good episode with these two characters who, Hanscom at least it's her first time returning, but with Jodie, we kind of know Jodie, we're really used to her. It was just those two characters kind of interacting with each other. Jodie being the very serious character, and Hanscom being the silly, funny, perky, happy person. And without a doubt, the best part was when they were at the the gear room or whatever. And the first part where the guy's like talking about like, oh, ladies, you can have like this little gun and go get your nails done and stuff. And they're like, yeah, like thanks, like this guy's a douche. And they're like, okay, they know the facts about all the guns. I enjoyed that, and then even better was, of course, Jodie, even though it kind of ended up with them arguing for a second, but Jodie helping out Hanscom when her husband was talking about her again and stuff. I thought she was going to punch him when she was like, alright, and she moved. I thought she was moving in just to sock this guy right in the face, which I really would have loved. That would have been amazing to see. But she kind of just tells him off, and he has no comeback for that. And that was without a doubt my favorite part of the episode. I really loved that. But it was just good. Like, that was my favorite part. Like, if I look back on this episode, nothing about the vampire stuff is gonna get to me at all. Especially due to the fact that it ended up being vampires, because I thought it would be something different with the fact that like these people were like blowing up and stuff like that, and it was just kind of like the guy who ended up being killed off at the end of this episode, and that was something that I enjoyed too. Like, some of the stuff they did with the vampires was fairly unique. Like, the guy who basically taught these other vampires, he changed his ways, and at the end of the episode, when he didn't want to join back with them, he just gave up. It wasn't like, I'm gonna try to escape from them, or I'm going to help everyone, all the humans escape and then fight back. And he ends up surviving, and then Sam and Dina like, all right, you can go because you changed your ways or whatever. And I actually enjoyed that, because it was like, okay, well, if he dies right here, then they don't have to go through the more typical thing where it's like, okay, here's a guy who kind of changed his ways, and he's proven that he's a good guy. He wasn't at first. He did admit that he killed people, and he even taught other vampires to, when you kill someone, take every bit that you can. So there were a couple of unique things with it, but ultimately it was just vampires again. And like I said, there were the bits and pieces, like him kind of just giving up at the end and getting decapitated. I actually thought was a good scene, because it was different. It's whenever they have that where the monsters are like, I changed my ways and stuff, they fight against their own kind. And in this one, it was just like, kiss my ass. And he just kneeled down and was like, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to run from you guys. I know if I do run, you'll just find me again and be killing a bunch of other people. So, if you're going to kill other people, it won't be because you're chasing me at least. It'll just be because you're vampires. And he just, stayed kneeling and got decapitated. And I thought that's at least slightly unique for what we typically see, including the stuff we see with vampires. So I did enjoy that, and the fact that they did like take all this stuff from the human bodies and they ate them way beyond what vampires normally do. But I was ultimately hoping, like, the big thing I was looking for was something like this new creature that thing kind of sort of mentioned in the last episode. I was like, okay, I was kind of hoping for that, but at the same time, even when the first show of like the dead body was like, okay, everything's gone, so it was like, it can't be that. But I was hoping for something a bit different than vampires. But like I said, it was fairly typical, but they did put some interesting elements in it that I certainly enjoyed. Like, without a doubt, as far as the vampire stuff goes, the guy just kneeling down and accepting that he kind of screwed stuff up was my favorite part about the vampire portion. But ultimately, I love the Jodie Hanscom stuff, and Hanscom may or may not come back. I'd like to see her come back, especially if she's tied with Jodie, because her with Jodie, I think, is perfect, because they are like polar opposites. So they both have different things that they can talk about that's kind of tragic in their lives, but at the same time they can ultimately work together, and it works out in the end. So overall, I think it was an okay episode. I won't say I really enjoyed it or anything. It was, the Jodie Hanscom stuff was definitely the greatest stuff. When they got to the vampire portion, I actually enjoyed it a little bit less, but I did enjoy the episode. Like, more than half of it was just Jodie and Hanscom, so without a doubt, I'd still recommend the episode simply for that, because of the silly moments they had in it. But it was just like another one-off episode that I feel like we've got a ton of those this episode. I think like the first three, I think, were really story-driven, and then after that, it was kind of just over and over again. We got like one-off episodes, and I know technically it was only like 2 episodes. It was like the 200th episode, and then the episode after that, which was the sort of Clue episode, which was actually really great. And maybe that's another thing. Like, even though those 2 were one-off episodes, the 200th episode was the 200th episode, and then the one after that was just really, really good to me. I thought it was hilarious. And then this one, as a one-off episode, I didn't enjoy it all the way through. It was just like, most of it I did, and then the ending was just like, meh, like vampires, and then they killed them, and then they got out, and then it was over. And it was just like, the ending, I think, was just like, it kind of just fizzled to me compared to some of the other one-off episodes, and especially considering it's like packed in between the huge reveal last week and then mid-season finale. It's like, normally I don't see those things. I try not to do that because it's like a review, but it's hard not to, because we've had so many other one-off episodes in the season compared to most, at least in order to me. And then it's like, it's sandwiched right in between. And I always hate that. I think we always do, no matter what show it is. It's like, all right, the story's ramping up, and then here's the filler, and it's just like a straight line for nothingness. But it at least had some really great moments. Hopefully, Hanscom does come back. Like I said, they'd have to work the story around, like she would have had to have moved to where Jodie is in order for them to be together again in another episode. But I would love to see that because, like I said, it was my favorite part of the episode. But ultimately, I want to know what you guys think. So, of course, comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and what you guys think of Hanscom. Like, do you want her to come back? Did you want her to come back after the last episode she was in? Personally, I didn't. I never thought she would have come back just because. I mean, how many people do they always meet where it's like, oh, here's a cop that helped them out in an episode, and then it's like, all right, see you later, and then that's it. So I never would have even expected her to come back. But I enjoyed her in this episode. It worked even better because she was kind of foiled by Jodie. So, I've already said like 3 times now, I would love it if she came back. If she was tied in with Jodie again somehow, that would definitely be my favorite. But of course, I want to know what you guys think. So comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.